More Americans are watching their weight. Many are on reduced fat diets, yet the demands of everyday life prevent most of us from strictly keeping to our weight management goals, especially when it comes to fatty foods we sometimes consume. Luckily, there's naturally sourced stimulant-free supplement to help eliminate fat from foods called calories. Taken with meals containing fats, clinically tested calories binds with the fat from food and reduces up to 500 calories a day. Calories can give you the edge in managing your weight. Calories helps maintain healthy cholesterol and triglyceride levels as well. Calories needs no prescription and is available at your local GNC, Walgreens, and soon CVS store or online at calories.com. That's CALOREASE.com. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Blog Talk Radio.
We are the UR Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the UR Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good morning and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, coming at you from Atlanta, Georgia, where we have a gorgeous sunny spring day. Finally, it's been we're able to look out the window and see the trees in bloom and the sun shining, and really thrilled that my son's high school team is finally getting to play all these matches that have been postponed for the last 6 weeks. So today we have with us a coach who has such a wide range of experiences, I don't really even know where to start, but Coach Ben and I met for the first time in person at the NCAAs last year because he works with several players that I know and whose parents I know, and so we got to meet, and I just was totally taken with him the first time we met. We saw each other again recently at the Indian Wells tournament, and we're sitting next to each other having a really incredible conversation when I said to him, okay, wait, you need to come on my show because other parents and coaches need to hear this. So I'm really, really excited that Ben was available to be with us today. Let me give you just a little bit of background on him. Ben's from Zimbabwe, and you will hear his beautiful accent in just a moment. He and his brother Zebu both grew up playing tennis. Their dad introduced them to the sport when they were about 6 or 7 years old, but really focused more on soccer, like a lot of kids outside the U.S. Soccer was their main sport growing up, but at around 13, 14 years old, they decided to focus on their tennis, the two of them, and went through the junior tennis kind of structure in Zimbabwe, and then Ben came to the U.S. for college in 2000. He played college tennis at Union University in Tennessee, in my home state of Louisiana, and after college began coaching and has kind of made his way around the U.S. He's coached in San Antonio, Baton Rouge, Memphis, and now he's focused and based more in Southern California and Oxnard and Santa Barbara areas. But he travels all over the place with his players and has coached, from the novice, most beginner level up to professional players. So Ben really does have a wide range of experience, and I'm just really excited for you guys to get to hear from him today about his coaching philosophy and his thoughts on what we need to be doing better in the U.S. Before I bring Ben on the air, though, I want to go to a quick commercial, and when we come back, Coach Ben.
Warning. Orthopedic surgeons are seeing an increase in overuse injuries when young athletes perform the same repetitive stressful motions over and over. Pitching, tennis, weight training, even long swimming workouts can cause overuse trauma that may require surgery. If your kids play and train hard, visit orthoinfo.org or stopsportsinjuries.org. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and I want to just give you the call-in number in case you're listening live and would like to chat with us today. That number, as always, is 714-583-6853. Again, 714-583-6853. And now, as promised, our guest, Coach Ben. Ben, thanks so much for being with us today. I'm, like I said, so excited to pick your brain and let you share your philosophies with us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Lisa.
Small world kind of story. As I mentioned before, you and I finally met in person. Wasn't it at the NCAA's the first time we met?
Yes, NCAA.
I met you at clay courts, and so it was just so funny. I didn't make the connection that you guys were brothers until much later, but I'm a little
yeah, we don't really look that much alike, so a lot of people always wonder.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that you are friends with my son's first coach, Noah Dawu, who's also a Zimbabwe fan, and so that was a really funny connection.
Oh yeah, I actually coached him a little bit when he was a junior before he came to the U.S. Before I came, actually, because I came before him.
Wow, wow! I've seen that.
I've known him for a long time.
That's very cool.
I've known him for a long time.
So we were in Indian Wells last week. We were talking about, all this discussion that goes on about what's wrong with American tennis and, what are we doing wrong for our kids and why can't our kids compete on the world stage and why are they losing college scholarships to international players, and we really touched on a lot of topics. And from my perspective, I then told you about the article I had written for Huffington Post, and we kind of got into the whole discussion of culture and the differences between U.S. culture and the cultures of countries around the world. And so I think I'd like to start the conversation today with you sharing your thoughts on where the U.S. culture differs and how that's affecting our kids and their ability to
Hello?
I'm here.
Oh,
can
sorry,
you hear me?
I lost you for a little. Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So I don't know if you heard my question, but I was saying I wanted to start our discussion with you sharing your thoughts on what it is that's different about our culture here in the U.S. that you feel is limiting our junior players on a world stage.
Well, firstly, here's I believe in the earlier stages of tennis development, we are actually not that far off. Because a lot of our juniors compete in all these very big tournaments and do very well. Even Junior Davis Cup and stuff like that. We've always been able to field teams that go on to win or go very far. We have players that do well at Orange Bowl, Les Petitas, all these big tournaments. But there's a transitional phase from top junior to either professional or whatever that seems to not be connected as well. But like I said, in our discussion, one of the main things for me is the culture. Now, if a lot of the kids that we have out here, most of the ones that play tennis anyway, they have a lot of involvement from parents, which in a lot of cases is a good thing. But unfortunately, sometimes as parents, we overprotect our kids from what they need to experience to become great at anything that they do. One of the examples I gave last time was, we don't allow our kids to suffer, because there's no success without suffering. There's no one who has achieved anything that can tell you they did not go through they did not go through a tough time to become what they have become. But we always seem to protect our kids from suffering. Now, how do we do that? A lot of times, if a kid is either training or playing competition, suffers a tough loss, we either try to get them out of that feeling as quickly as possible, which is normal, because that's how parents react. But a lot of times, they need to feel that, experience it, and hopefully it will push them. But of course, like I said, some kids, it probably pushes them away. But then again, at the same time, if you really want to produce great players, a lot of the great players will find a way, or at least will have a team that encourages them to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Now, with the travel that I've done abroad and all over the world, seeing all these junior players and how they are raised in other countries, one thing that I noticed was how their systems always promoted humility and the teamwork kind of framework. The guys are competing 24/7, but there's a teamwork. They're almost like a family. So if you see Argentinians at tournaments, they just seem to be a group. If you see Spanish at a tournament, they seem to be a group. If you see the French, they seem to be a group. But it doesn't seem to be the same thing here in the U.S. So if you get to a tournament, it's not as likely that our top players are hanging out together. They're not as connected to each other as the other teams. Yeah, fine. Some are. There's a couple of guys who are, but it's not at the same rate as the other countries, so to say. But that aspect comes from a lot of these kids grow up playing together for so long that they really become pretty much their family, because you're traveling a lot. And when you're traveling a lot, the people you hang out with are the people who travel just as much as you, and they become your friends, and you've known them all your life. A lot of the players here, because of the way our tennis system is, the players play. As soon as they lose, they're ejected from that tournament. You got to go home. So, and I'm sure it also happens in other countries, but not at the same rate. A lot of times the kids stay at those tournaments, and after you lose, or either there's more matches for you to play, or even if you lose, you can hang out at the tournament because probably your parents can only pick you up later on in the day because they have to work. Now, that takes away from the time you need to be in a tournament to actually watch other people play, the time that it takes to make friends and you get comfortable in that scenario. It takes away from a lot of other aspects that can keep a kid enjoying to play and working without putting so much pressure on themselves. They're already putting enough pressure to win against their own peers, but you can relax just a bit more because you're able to hang and you look forward to hanging. And to be honest, most of the kids actually look forward to being around their other mates more than the tennis itself at an earlier age, which is a good thing because it's gonna keep them in the sport a lot longer because they want to be out there. They want to go and see those guys again. They want to go play with those guys. And once they get to their teens, of course, the girl aspect of it is there. They want to be where guys and girls are mingling. So, and which is a good dynamic because it keeps our kids happy and playing a lot without having to think about it. And another thing that I also mentioned was the length that other people practice and play matches is just longer than here. Over here, we've got a culture of get in, do your 1 hour, get out, that I feel has eroded tennis the most, because it is almost impossible to create a world-class player by seeing them 1 hour a week here and there and hoping that this person is going to be world-class. While the other places I've gone to visit and to train with my players, kids are playing from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Of course, there's breaks in between, whatever, but they play longer hours. And I believe those hours will add up at some point. But again, that comes back to that aspect of either we are protecting our kids from we're protecting our kids from the feeling of not doing well after putting in so much work, rather than encouraging them to put in as much work as they can. Of course, we got to watch injuries and stuff like that, but we have to encourage them to put as much effort as they can into what they're doing. So, but again, some of it has to do with the financial side of things. A lot of times it does not make financial sense to have that kind of approach, but that comes down to the coaches making it more affordable to pursue tennis in that way, because it is very unrealistic for most people to approach tennis thinking, okay, listen, I'm going to play my 3 to 4 hours a day, 5 times a week. It's almost unrealistic in a lot of places. But as coaches, if we make an effort to make it a little more affordable and make it make sense and find ways to make it make sense for the parents, then there's a higher chance we would have kids playing longer, rather than the parents having a legitimate excuse to not let training be that long. So,
one of the things, sorry, Ben, I was
go ahead.
That I know that you do so effectively is you bring kids together to train as a group, and you facilitate the relationship building among the kids. You facilitate the relationship building among the parents. You encourage these kids to reach out to each other beyond the time they're with you on the court. You even, I know, take groups of kids out of the country to train and play tournaments. And there aren't a lot of coaches that either have the knowledge of how to do that, have the means to do that, or are in a community where there are enough kids to do that. And I was wondering if you could share how you figured out how to bring these groups together to be effective training, socially together, and all that.
Okay, now, it's been something that my brother and I've we've been very fortunate, that the times we've been able to create these kind of groups, in that we've managed to find people that think the same, or at least hear us out and understand it. Because one of the toughest things to do in that whole thing is convincing parents of kids of the same age that the kids need this. Because there is a feeling or a thought process that if I do this more privately, I will get ahead of the other kids, which parents think can work. And sometimes that it can work, but at some point you need the players to play a lot with other players. So if you do not create environments that allow that, then it becomes very tough for kids to get better. Now, what we've done, like I said, we've always been able to bump into the people that need it, and luckily, our past experiences and stuff have helped our resume, so to say, in that department. So we have a lot of parents that actually feel we know what we are talking about. But it's mostly a lot of work trying to control the players' egos and mostly the parents' egos. The kids are fine. Kids are easier to put together than the parents. But if you can find a way to convince the parents, that this is what they need, then you can create these groups. Now, one of the main reasons we loved taking guys to Europe was that they experienced what we were talking about. But in Spain, we go to Spain a lot, and in Spain, there's a lot of academies. So in these academies, there's a lot of players that play. So you are able to get a match or set in or drills or ball feed all day. You're able to do that all day, every day. So you're able to take care of all aspects of your tennis in one spot. So it's not the same here in the U.S. Yes, we've got academies in Florida and here and there, but still the environments are not the same. So once they experienced that it also became something that they realized is a need for some of the players that we had. They realized, listen, and so some of them they knew already because we were doing that anyway here, but need for that just became even greater. So when we would come back, it wouldn't be so hard to get things together. And of course, it makes tennis cheaper for everybody if you do it that way, because then then people are not paying full pop to be in training for 2 to 3 hours in a day. Everybody shares the cost of what's going on, including the tournament travel, and then the players start to have more fun because we're going to these national tournaments as a group. We're going to watch college tennis as a group, because I always make my players go to watch college matches. And professional tournaments that would come around. We used to have the LA Open. I made sure we went. And Indian Wells, we always go. So it is something that I always said, listen, once we do it and those, going to those kind of tournaments, and even futures around here, going to those futures and college matches, it's not something that, yes, it is my time, but I love doing it myself. And I don't feel the need for people to pay me to take them to college. So that's just me. But it is a great thing for parents to look into and say, listen, I want to pay my coach to take my kids to this thing so that they can watch, and we can, because when I go with my players, we're busy critiquing the college players or the pro guys' mistakes, strategically and technically, whatever, so that they have an understanding of what it is that we are also working on, and realize either that it's done this way, or do you see the mistakes that guy made. But it's stuff that is the way I grew up with tennis that I found worked for us back in Zimbabwe. And when we came here, my brother and I, when we started our whole academy stuff here in California, it was the same concept that we tried to use, to say, listen, we got to get the groups together, we got to make tennis cheaper, we got to travel a lot. And a lot of times at the beginning, of course, it was using our own resources as much as the little we had to try and get to expose the kids to certain tournaments and travel as a crew. Even if some kids could not afford so much, we would always buffer the system. But that, again, comes from someone who really, really loves the game and is a student of the game, because you have to make a couple sacrifices here and there. But for sure, if you want your players to get better, you are going, it's a for sure way of making them better. Getting kids with similar abilities, similar goals together is better than one random kid working with just his coach.
Right. And one of the things that you pointed out to me when we were talking is, you at this stage of the game, a lot of the kids you work with are from families of means, and finances aren't a struggle for these families, and these kids have grown up in very privileged environments. But it's important to you that these kids understand that not everybody grows up and lives like they do. And so can you talk a little bit about the efforts that you make to show these young players the big world and what their responsibilities are as
absolutely, yes. Now, yes, a lot of the players that I've worked with have been privileged, but I've also had some who have not. But for the most part, yes. And the traveling, going to a lot of countries and some parts of the United States that we probably would never care to go to, has helped a lot. But more so the international travel, because that's where the kids meet kids from all walks of life. Because, you get kids from Iraq, from Israel, from Sudan, from anywhere in the world coming to train in all these places. And some of them are sponsored kids who don't have anything. So whenever we bump into some kids who we know don't have stuff, I always try to point it out to the guys to tap into their sympathy, to tap into their humility and say, listen, see, this kid doesn't have as much as we have. We need to find a way of just helping that kid. And a good amount of times, we do. I've been fortunate enough to be around parents that, of course, also for me, it's a parental thing, because if parents teach their kids humility early, where the kindness and helping others matters, it is so much easier to work with that kid in that area. So I try to make sure I point out a lot of situations that are not as good as ours, and a lot of times we've stayed in places where, it's not as comfortable for the guys, but I tell them, listen, the other kids are staying here, so we are fine. We're not going to die. And they get used to it to the point that they don't even want, they get to the point where they don't even want to be looked at as, oh, those are the kids that stay over there, we stay over here. No, they want to stay with everybody else. And they like that because, you become more part of the tournament that way. So, and like I said, luckily enough, some of the kids, they come from families where, even though they have money, the parents have done a great job of teaching that aspect of it, to where, when kids bump into, they bump into a kid who doesn't have this or doesn't have that, and they come to tell me that, man, that kid, he doesn't have anywhere to stay, or he doesn't have a way to get back home. He's not here with his parents. And I'm like, oh, man, let's try to see if we can do something. And then we end up helping the kid, of course, through their parents or whatever, or sometimes just by ourselves, because they see that, oh, man, we got to find the joy in helping somebody else. It's not always just about yourself. And, like part of it, for me, the coaches can do a lot in that department, because we are the most influential, one of the most influential people in their lives at that time. Parents, then coaches. And a lot of times the kids are not even listening to their parents so much at that age. So I feel it is our duty as coaches to make sure we take advantage of our position and try to get the kids to understand certain things or aspects that would never relate to them otherwise. But that's why I love taking trips to France, take kids to tournaments where they experience feelings of of not having the usual. I have to sleep on a very hot bed. It's just hot. There's no AC. We got to get on the train and right away get on the court. It's stuff that you're persevering the whole time. You have to dig deeper than usual. You're used to a car rental is available. I get to the tournaments an hour early. I warm up. I do everything. Food is readily available. But now you have to learn to fight through adversity without the norms, without the perfect world around you, and the French people not really happy that you don't know how to speak English, but you got to find a way to express yourself and keep yourself going and not allow yourself to break down or have a bad attitude about things, but just to keep yourself out there. Another thing I like doing is teaching the guys about giving back. So with giving back, I tell them I do not want you to always think of giving back as monetary. It's not about the money. Giving back is about high-fiving the kid. Giving back is about go jump in a little kid's clinic and just let them have fun. Or go and jump into an old people's clinic and jump in there and have some fun with them. Get out there, play some doubles with them. Just do something that is outside what you always do. Just find a way to make that a little fun. You don't have to do it every day, but sometimes I have to force them, of course, and I make them jump in, but they see the joy and the reward of it after the fact. And then they realize, oh, man, this was fun. We can do this all the time. And I'm like, listen, it's very, very important that you always find time to give back. It's not always about saying, listen, I wrote a check, it's okay. No. The kids need a high five. The kids need to see that college player recognized me because they're aspiring to be you. They're watching you practice and you don't see it because you think, okay, because I'm not Roger Federer, there's no way a kid is aspiring to be me. But you're a college player or you're a top national junior. They know it. They can see you practicing. The intensity that's on that court is greater than over here. Those are the guys. So if that guy who is the guy just swings by and says, kid, I love your forehand, and keeps walking, the kid just feels good about himself. And there's nothing wrong with making someone else feel good because someone else did it for you at some point that kept inspiring you to keep playing. So those are the few things I like to do and try to help the kids on that aspect of their life, because this is a life lesson. It's not just a tennis lesson. It's more like a life lesson. You need guys to be humble. You need guys to be more benevolent, even with their time, and of course some of them it could be financial or donating old stuff like rackets and clothes to kids that just don't have. All that kind of stuff. We try to always keep the guys and girls' minds thinking about.
Love that. I mean, that really struck a chord with me when you were telling me about that the first time, and I've always kind of maintained that coaches have a responsibility beyond teaching these kids how to hit balls between the lines. And
absolutely.
Like you said, the coach tends to wield a lot more influence over these kids, especially in the preteen and teenage years. And when we parent, in our kids' minds, we don't know anything. The coach knows everything, and
of course.
And that's a lot of responsibility. And
yes,
to me, the fact that you take that so seriously speaks volumes about who you are as a person and who you are as a coach. And it's reflected in the results of the kids you work with. I mean, I'll brag on you a little bit. I know you.
Thank you.
You coach kids who you and who are playing, who are in the lineup at USC. You coach a kid who plays at Columbia. You coach a top international junior player. A couple of them you work with, and and you're always willing to take an extra kid or two with you on these trips. And I just think it's phenomenal. I mean, like I said, the results speak to your abilities as a coach, not only as a tennis coach, but as a life coach for these kids as well. And I think, well, it's true, and I know the parents whose children you work with, and I know they appreciate that so much too, and see the value in what you bring to their families. But I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit about how we can improve our competitive structure here in the U.S. because you have so much experience in the ITF events and how tournaments look in different parts of the world. What do you think we can do here at home to improve our competition structure, the way our rankings work, the way kids are selected for tournaments, to help our kids be more competitive on an international level?
Okay. Now, one of the most important things is for kids to enjoy competition, is to teach kids how to enjoy competition. Now, you cannot enjoy competition when you're being battered all the time. If you're going to a tournament and it's love and love, there's nothing about that that's fun. So I've seen great strides even here in South Carolina, where the association is trying to change the system, make the draws a little smaller, but in doing so, make sure that there's other tournaments available for the kids that don't make it into those tournaments. So you make the draw smaller so that the best kids play each other as much as possible, and the players that are below that are also playing each other, because these big draws that we've always had have created, yes, they seem inclusive, they seem like we have a lot of kids playing tennis, and it is a fact the numbers will be high in this tournament. So you're looking at, oh man, we've got all these kids, but half the kids lose in that draw. We lose half the kids in a 120, 128 draw, and that half, about 60% of them just got smashed by players who are just way too good for them. And unfortunately, most of the times, the kids and parents are driving long distances to this tournament. So that means the kid spends 45 minutes to an hour losing love and love. Then they have to get into the car and drive back home with a parent that's huffing and puffing because of your lack of effort, when really it is just that the other player was just too good for you. Then you got another 2 hours back home, 1 hour and a half, 2 hours back home in this ride, and you have to feel like that. Not too many kids want to feel like that for too long, and that's why it's always at the age of 14, 15 that kids quit tennis. It's a very crucial time of their growth, that they start feeling like they can choose what they want to do or not want to do. And that's always the time when you lose a lot of players, because they've had this feeling of failure way too many times, of feeling of worthlessness. I can't, and I totally understand that feeling, because you can't lose that much and that way for too long. But if we created smaller draws where, let's say, the top 32 play each other in a tournament, and the next 32 are in another tournament at the same time somewhere else, and the next 32 are in a tournament somewhere else, this would make sure that the level is high at all levels, and more competitive. So you're in a tournament that you have a chance of winning. And then also we have to try and make the tournaments, because of making them smaller, we have to try and make more draws that allow kids to play more than one match, no matter what. I went to Utah a couple years back with a kid I was helping out. His name was Caleb Brand. And I went to Utah and I witnessed the campus draw for the first time. And it was a weird thing for me because I was like, man, we've had all these kids here for 3 total days playing tennis, and they're having so much fun because nobody had to go home, so they're having a lot of fun, and they were able to finish the matches on time, finish the tournament on time, and everything. But the draw was a 32 draw, but it allowed each player to leave there with a minimum of 4 singles and 2 doubles, and I was like, this is magical. If you did this with every kid, that really allows the kids to get better because they're getting that match play they need. One match a week being slaughtered is just not going to make the cut. And even for the good player, what am I driving hours or flying across the nation to go and play a kid I'm going to beat love and love? I need the time I'm spending and the resources I'm spending to make more sense. That's why some kids would rather skip some tournaments because I can't be in a tournament where I'm bashing some kid from God knows where, and then I have to wait 2 matches to play a competitive match. If those competitive matches started right off the bat, the kids are pushing each other. And like I said, if you have another draw for the next 32, that area is competitive within itself. Then the level behind that is also competitive within itself. So,
rather than seeing, sorry to interrupt you, but rather than seeing these waterfall draws, which we have a lot of in our section, in the southern section, where it may be 32 kids, but they're divided into 2 draws, not the top 32 and then the top 16 and then the next 16. But rather each draw is leveled so that the number 1 player's in one draw, number 2's in the other draw, number 3, number 4, and they're divided up so that you have overall draws that have the top kids and the lowest level kids in the same draw. You're saying, wouldn't it be better to have number 1 through 16 in one draw and number 17 through 32 in a separate draw? That way both draws are competitive for the kids that are in them.
Absolutely. And still give a chance for, let's say, the winners or the top 2 players that finish in tournament number 2 to move up, and the last 2 from tournament draw number 1 to move down. So you're allowing an upward and downward promotion, so to say, so that someone has to work hard to stay up and someone has to work hard to go up. Then that way, and however you do the point system, you allow the point system to push players to allow players that are lower to move up if they win 2 tournaments down there. Your points push you up, however you do it. Or you just say, listen, the top 2 players in the next tournament, you guys are going up, the last 2 players over here, you're coming down, but you're allowing players an opportunity to move up because you don't want to just keep those top 16 guys or top 32 guys getting complacent about their spots. You'd rather have them always feeling the pressure of, man, if I don't do well in this tournament, the other kids are going to take my spots. That way the kids are pushing each other all the time. But the feeling of losing all the time is slightly taken away because you have an opportunity to play 4 matches against guys who are your level. So that there's a chance you could squeeze in 1. But even if you don't, parents would be happy that their kids played 4 matches than to go to a tournament to play 1 match. And so will the kids, because that gives you a chance to redeem yourself. And even if you lose all 4 matches in your little group, but guess what? You play 4. And next week you have to move down, or 2 weeks from now you got to move down to the draw below you where you're even more competitive, or maybe that just means that's where you belong. However it happens, at least you're having the best kids, or all the kids, playing more competitive matches. You cannot call 6 love a competitive match. We need every match to matter for each kid. So,
right.
So that the kids push each other.
So are you familiar with universal tennis ratings?
Which rating?
The universal tennis ratings, the one UTR.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
absolutely, and it's also a rating system. Well, I was fortunate to be in a conference here like 3 weeks ago in Carson, where the gentleman who devised the whole thing was explaining the system to us, and it totally reiterated my feeling about the development side of things, because it showed how just 60% of the matches are just not competitive enough for the kids. So there is zero chance that those 60 were being bashed, and the way the system brought it out, it just shows that if a match is 2-2 and below, that's just a whitewash. And it was 60% of those matches were that bad. So there was nothing about it that improved the guy who won, and there's nothing about it that improved the kid who lost. So why should we have matches that are not improving our kid? A more competitive match, which is between 3 and 4, is so much better than a love against the number 1 seed. Yes, you played the top guy in the nation, but really, we just wasted our time.
Right. And I know in Northern California, and I don't know if Southern California has adopted this, but in NorCal they are creating tournaments based on UTR. The New Balance High School Championship that was held last summer at Harvard, that was based on UTR. And I did an analysis along with the folks from UTR of Winter Nationals, looking at the ratings of each of the kids and the matchups, and how the seedings would have fallen out if they were based on UTR rather than USTA ranking, and it was all very interesting. I mean, UTR seems to be getting more and more accurate the more data that they collect, and it sounds to me as if what you're talking about in terms of creating a tournament structure where it's more level-based fits right into using UTR for selection and seeding purposes, and would really benefit our kids. And I know, and I've talked about this before because I've had the folks from UTR on the show multiple times, but, for college recruiting purposes even, I mean, that looking at the UTR of the various schools that my son was looking at helped him make his final decision. I mean, he wants a school where he's going to play, and
that's another thing, because it is not easy for college coaches, and if they use ITF or USTA rankings with the way they are, a lot of times some kids are high because they can afford to travel. So they can go wherever and play a lot of tournaments or be in weak regions and accumulate these tournaments. And it appears as though you are that good. But once you get there and you do not deliver because you are really not at that level yet, the coach, is put in a little bit of a fix, and so are you, because you have this inflated ranking which was not really your level, and all of a sudden you're playing guys who are really that level, and things don't pan out. Some kids fall from the pressure and they quit, and it does happen a lot of times where kids end up quitting, and people are telling you this kid was top 100 in ITF, this kid was top 20 in the US, but then the kid ends up quitting tennis because it can't stand the pressure. But you had a ranking which was coming from the fact that you had the resources to travel from state to state or go to other sections to play those national tournaments, other sections which were weaker.
Right.
So if you don't substantiate that ranking of yours, then you don't pan out when you get to college, because all that stuff is thrown out the window. Because the coach is recruiting you highly, he expects you to play.
Right, and we even see that. We even see that with tennis recruiting, with the star ratings a little bit. It's not very common, but it is happening where kids are repeating a year in school so that their star rating goes up, and they're waiting a year to recruit, and it's the same thing. It's an inflated rating that once they get to college, they're still, if they were a 3-star as a ninth grader and then they repeat ninth grade and all of a sudden go up to a 5-star because they're playing kids a year younger than them, that's not really an accurate depiction of their level. So, and that's where I think UTR really does help, not just the coaches. And I hope that the parents listening and the kids listening understand that having an inflated ranking isn't going to help you in the long run. It's like anything else. I mean, it's kind of a little white lie, and until you face up to the reality of your level, great, you get recruited to play at Stanford because you're a blue chip on tennis recruiting, but then you get to Stanford and you can't hang with the rest of the players on the team, and therefore you don't make the weekly lineup. That stinks. I mean, I don't know any kid that wants to be in that situation.
No, that's the truth of the matter. So, but again, a lot of it is easier with the kids than the parents. Sometimes parents want things which their kids just cannot do. There's a lot of lack of honesty in that department. I prefer to work with honesty. Listen, if you're here, if you want to go there, there's no problem, but it entails a lot of work, and it entails a lot of suffering. So we have to be ready for what it is that it entails. But if we're not ready for that, then no problem. You need to stick to where you fit in, so that you have less disappointment in the long run. But again, for me, I'm not a dream killer. I try to facilitate dreams, but at the same time, I try to be as realistic as possible, depending on your work rate.
Well, so let me ask you this, and I think that's a great point. But when you go to these tournaments in Europe or South America or Africa, or wherever you wind up traveling, are the tournaments more level-based in those countries? Or, are you seeing the type of tournament structure that you envision for us here in the U.S., where it's a smaller draw but with multiple opportunities to play against players at your similar level?
Now, I experienced that in France. In France, they have a system, because I take guys to play men's opens over the summers and stuff. So they have a system where you have a level. They give you a rating, and that rating is where you start the tournament. So there's ratings, there could be ratings below you, and there are ratings for sure after you. So depending on the rating you have.
How do they determine your initial rating, though, Ben?
Now they tried, because with my guys, the coach played college. The guy who organized our thing, our trip, played college tennis in the U.S. So he has a sense of how good a player is if they're at a particular school and their ranking. And he also called me to check how good I thought my players were. Mm-hmm. But they tried their best not to give you a rating that's too high, because at least if you are slightly below your actual rating, it's better, because at least you're going to get more matches and you're going to work your way to where you really are anyway, rather than give you something that's too high and you're just going to lose a match. So, but it was we were not too far off of where we were last year when I went with the guys, and I think really only one guy was probably underrated, because he ended up winning 2 tournaments. But otherwise, everybody else I felt was accurate enough for us to get a good bunch of matches in. And we did not have matches where we were just totally whitewashing people. It was not like that. They were pretty competitive. I would say 90% of the time. So and the way and once you get this rating, like I said, you get into the tournament from where your rating begins. So there are some ratings that are below you, and people playing to come to play you. And then once you jump in, you are playing to get to play guys above you until you, of course, fall out of the tournament. So essentially, if a guy has an ATP ranking of, let's say, 800 to 700 in the world, that guy is showing up to the tournament in the quarters or semis, depending on how big that tournament is. And if a guy, so you do have a chance to play, pro guys, because they come there to make the money for them to travel. For some of the tournaments, and some guys actually pay to show up because it's a French Federation thing, so they try to help the players go and travel play for tournaments. So you get some names of guys who are actually on the tour, and you hope to work yourself to get to play them. And there's a lot of guys. Their tennis culture is very rich. They don't lose players, so to say. It's the same in Spain. They don't lose players, unlike here in the U.S. Where if players finish college, they get jobs and they're done with tennis. Their players just keep playing and playing and playing and playing. So their men's opens are a very, very good tournament. Over here, a lot of our men's opens are now full of kids and 3 or 4 guys who just still love tennis and they just want to get out there and chase balls. But for the most part, we lose a lot of wealth tennis-wise, a lot of very good players who used to be top juniors who could potentially help the next generation of top American juniors become very good by seeing that kind of quality competition and ball at an earlier age. But we don't have that structure here like they do. They've got leagues and those men opens which help keep guys in the game, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. We're coming to the end of the show, which I hate because I've got so much I want to talk to you about. We're going to have to do another one. But that last point you made, I'd forgotten we had talked about that. And that was a really eye-opening thing for me to hear from you, was one of the things we're really missing in the U.S. for our kids is these former top-performing college players and top-performing pros staying in the game and playing events at home where our kids have the opportunity not only to watch them play, but to actually compete against them. And wouldn't that be fantastic, if, here in Atlanta, we've got Robbie Ginepri who lives here, Robbie, it'd be awesome. He runs an academy. My son used to train there, and it's a fantastic facility. And, every now and then he's on the courts with some of the kids, but wouldn't it be amazing if he were playing the local men's opens and these college players had the chance to play against him?
Yes. No, that's the kind of thing that happens over there, which is crazy because, like I said here, we lose a wealth of players. Now they are lucky they've got systems which, if guys play those tournaments, they can actually sustain themselves. So you could
financially, you're saying.
Yes, you could make 30 to 40,000 a year doing that, which is probably the same as you're going to make when you leave college to go and start your first job. So, and this is something you love. So why would I rush to go and get some job that I don't really even love when I can spend a year or two running around hitting some balls? Now, that year or two is massive for American tennis in the long run. So the more guys that we can keep playing it's like I said, especially those men's opens, because those kids are closer. I mean, those guys will be closer to home, so they don't have to travel too far. Yes, now I like the fact that more guys are actually jumping into those futures and challenges right after college. But still, there's still a lot of other players who could be playing and sustaining themselves off making $500 to $600 in the weekend and go and play. And I guarantee the guys who are playing those futures would rather play those tournaments, which is why their tournaments stay rich with players, because players are making more money off money tournaments than they are at the futures and challenger level. So why would they rush to go all the way there unless they are really just going to work on their ranking? So that means that person is focused on making the finances make sense for him to go and play those big tournaments. Now, if we create that environment, guess what? That means we will have those guys playing all the time close to us, and the kids are seeing that ball. They're playing each other to try and just get that match against that guy. So you play 3-4 matches to go play a pro level guy, so that you can feel the ball and see where you are. Then you're out of the tournament. Next week, I've got another chance to do the same thing. But it takes me a couple matches before I get to play that guy. That would be, a phenomenal thing to have here, because we're the ones with the college system, and it's an amazing system, and it's gotten a lot better. It is so much better than it used to be, because there's way better coaches now. Before, it used to be guys just in charge of tennis. Now a lot of coaches left, like USTA or private coaching to go and do college, coaching, because they're a little older now, and you need something more settled. But the fact that we've got experienced coaches out there that are actually helping players become better and move on to the next level, college tennis has just become so much better. But now if we can have that, if we can use that resource of those college players who are getting better to not just quit on the game, but be able to play over the weekend, who wouldn't want to make an extra $500-$600 over the weekend playing a sport they love if they're working during the week anyway? So you could have that or try to create league systems like they have in Europe, because they've got the league systems that pay guys tons of money, and the guys love playing them. Guys leave from the U.S. to go and play from all over the world, and they're making more money than guys on the tour. So, if we could create systems like that, that would give our youngsters, our top youngsters, a chance to see the big ball nice and early and not get rattled when they try to transition to the pros, because they're kind of used to it.
Right. Oh, well, so much to talk about and so much to think about. Thank you so much for coming on today. Yeah, we're over our time allotment, so I apologize to my listeners who got cut off live, but hopefully they'll tune into the podcast for the last few minutes. But Ben, thank you so much, and I've already told you I want you to hold a spot for my kid next summer for your France trip. I've already told him about it.
Absolutely.
He's chomping at the bit, so he can't wait. And I appreciate so much your willingness to share your thoughts and your knowledge and your experiences with the rest of us. And, we're all learning here and just trying to make tennis better for our kids. So keep doing what you're doing, and I look forward to seeing you at the next tournament or my next trip out to Southern California, or maybe you'll be in our neck of the woods at some point this summer. So
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and to my listeners, thanks so much for tuning in, and we have another great show next week. We'll be talking about a special trip to Wimbledon that's coming up this summer, and so I hope you'll tune in. Ben, thanks. Take care. Say hi to my buddies out in Southern California, and hope to see you guys soon.
Yes, indeed. Hope to see you soon, too.
Thanks. To my listeners, have a great week. We'll see you next week on Parenting Aces.